Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of News Dose, where I give you all of the latest gaming news, and we have multiple Naughty Dog stories today. Neil Druckmann, the writer behind The Last of Us Part 2, seems fed up, or in his words, exhausted from all of the criticism directed towards The Last of Us Part 2. The question is, does he have a point or not? So we will discuss that here in just a bit, as well as a fabricated story involving Naughty Dog. Also, Microsoft has officially shut down Mixer, but what does all of this mean for Xbox? So stay tuned for that as well, but as usual, first let's go over some of the quick news, starting with a couple new game announcements. Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2 has officially been announced, and this is incredibly exciting. The first game released back in 2018 as a stretch goal for Ritual of the Night and really emulates those old school Castlevania games. After all, the same director Koji Igarashi is behind both Castlevania and Curse of the Moon. The thing is, Curse of the Moon actually ended up being a really good game and wasn't just some rush job or anything like that. Many would even consider it to be one of the best Metroidvania games in recent years. So to see a sequel and so soon at that is really good to hear. There will be 3 new playable characters to play as, but unfortunately there is no set release date just yet. It will, however, be available on the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, the Nintendo Switch, and on Steam. So if you did like the first game, I hope you're really excited for the sequel. As for me though, I'm just hoping that an announcement for a Ritual of the Night sequel isn't too far behind. Now that would be cool, but until then, I'm perfectly happy getting a Curse of the Moon sequel. Both are great games. Also, Crossfire X has an official open beta release date for the Xbox One. The open beta will be available through June 25th to the 28th, and this game actually looks really good based off the little we have seen on this game. Now, apparently Crossfire is like some huge franchise over in Asia and South Korea, and even has like 1 billion players lifetime. Now that is just insane, but from my understanding, it's kind of an overhauled version of Crossfire, and it will be free to play. Now, if you didn't tell me, I would have not expected this game to be free to play. Again, based off the very little that we have seen of this game, it looks excellent from a visual standpoint, and actually looks like a lot of fun that could rival a big AAA game that costs $60. The thing is though, this beta may only be the multiplayer portion of the game, but what I'm really excited about the most when it comes to Crossfire X is that Remedy Entertainment is actually working on a single-player campaign for Crossfire X. Yes, the same developer that has made games like Alan Wake, Quantum Break, and Control. Yeah, those same developers are working on a single-player campaign for Crossfire X, though unfortunately it doesn't appear we will get to play that just yet. But if you like competitive multiplayer games, and you're looking for a game to play this weekend, then Crossfire X might be an interesting game to check out. It will be interesting to see if it can catch on in the West, similar to how it did in Asia, but we also need to see how they're going to monetize this game. That's always a very important topic when it comes to free-to-play games. Moving on though, Facebook has been very active in the game community here recently. They do of course own the Oculus VR headsets, and they really do seem to be all in on virtual reality. In fact, late last year they did acquire Beat Games, the developers behind Beat Saber, and then in February, they also acquired Sanzaru Games, which worked on Asgard's Wrath. Both of these games are absolutely fantastic VR games for the Oculus headsets, but Facebook and Oculus are not slowing down at all, as they picked up their 3rd studio within the last 8 months, Ready at Dawn. Now this one may surprise a few people because over the last year I've seen a lot of speculation about somebody acquiring Ready at Dawn, though usually fans believed it would be either PlayStation or Xbox. Of course, Ready at Dawn did develop the promising PlayStation 4 exclusive, The Order 1886, though it was met with a lot of criticism once it released. I mean, visually it was stunning, but there was some issues outside of its graphics. Even before that though, Ready at Dawn was linked to PlayStation quite a bit with several God of War games for the PlayStation Portable, and they even made a Daxter game, so there was a lot of rumors and speculation that Sony was going to try and pick them up, and that would have made perfect sense. But Oculus looks to have swooped in here to get them instead, and honestly, I'm not really all that surprised. Ready at Dawn did release an Oculus VR exclusive, Lone Echo, and they are making a sequel which is due to release sometime this year. They are one of the best virtual reality developers right now, and they make big AAA VR titles and have already worked with Oculus Studios, so I think this was a really good match. I know it may be disappointing to fans who don't care for VR, but if you do like VR, then this is probably a good thing. Now, speaking of Facebook, there has been a new development with Microsoft Mixer, one of Twitch streaming's biggest competitors, and the streaming service that Xbox really has tried to push over the last couple years. Unfortunately, Microsoft's streaming service Mixer has indeed been shut down, and they will now be transitioning the Mixer community over to Facebook Gaming if they choose to do so. This, of course, is very saddening for anybody who is affected by this shutdown, but if you've been following the service for a while now, this isn't completely coming out of nowhere. Mixer has been struggling for a little while, and even though from a technical standpoint Mixer was a great service, it really struggled to compete with Twitch. Twitch is just a huge platform and has a much bigger community. It did start up in 2011, and by the time Mixer released in 2016, Twitch by that point already had a well-established user base. So right out of the gate, Mixer was fighting an uphill battle trying to convince people to come over to Mixer, but nothing ever really stuck. They even tried to give lucrative contracts to big streamers such as Ninja for millions of dollars. Now those contracts will no longer exist because of this, but this is a gaming channel, so what does all of this mean for Xbox? Well, there is actually something very important that they did reveal during this shutdown. So apparently one of the reasons they went to Facebook Gaming is because of their future plans with Project xCloud, the game streaming service for Xbox. This means that you can stream Xbox games to your phone, PC, or wherever you want to play your Xbox games, so you won't even have to have an Xbox console to play their games. And we already know that they're going to pair xCloud with Xbox Game Pass, but their plans seem to go even further than that. One of their said plans is click and play, which is where having a platform like Facebook could really be beneficial. As we all know, Facebook is incredibly popular to say the very least. So what if somebody posted a gaming moment or an advertisement on Facebook regarding games, and you thought to yourself, hey, I want to try that game? Well, that is exactly what Microsoft is trying to do with Project xCloud on Facebook. You would simply be able to click on the game and immediately play it on your computer or phone with Project xCloud. Now that's actually a really good idea. Now, I'm not necessarily a big fan of Facebook or anything like that, but I could definitely see how this has a lot of potential. With that said though, do keep in mind that this is probably not the only place that click and play will be implemented. I do expect this at other places as well. In other news, let's talk about Naughty Dog because it just seems like that's all anybody can talk about here recently. Ever since The Last of Us Part 2 released last week, the community has just been buzzing over that game, and really even before it released. The thing is, much of the talk about this game has been very negative to say the least. A lot of fans are just very angry about this game, or more specifically, in how the story is told, so much so that it has a 4.0 user score on Metacritic. That is a huge contrast to the 91 that the original game received from fans. It's just a night and day difference. And the creative director and writer Neil Druckmann seems to be very frustrated over all of this criticism, pointing to many political stances that may have affected users' opinion of this game. Now, he probably does have a point to an extent because I am sure it has upset certain people in that regard, which is unfortunate. It personally does not affect my opinion as I'm okay with that type of stuff, though I honestly do not think that that is the main reason that fans are not liking The Last of Us Part 2. I think that's just an excuse to generalize all of the criticism, and from what I'm seeing, the main complaint with this game has nothing to do with that at all. The main problem I'm seeing is that you are forced to play a character that people absolutely hate because something she has done in the game. Now, I'm not going to go into what she did because I'm not bringing spoilers into this, but what she did, fans just cannot forgive, and then you are forced to play as her. I think a lot of people went into this game hoping to play as Ellie and Joel like the original because they did love those characters so much, but that just did not happen in The Last of Us Part 2, which is already frustrating for fans the way it is. Now, if we go back to the original game though, one of the reasons people loved that game so much was because they loved the characters and its story. And I know some people will point out that Joel also did some terrible things in the first game, but the main difference between the two is that we felt empathy for Joel. We went on this journey with a man and a little girl, and you saw how their relationship developed into an almost father-daughter relationship. And yes, Joel did do some terrible things, but it was out of love for somebody he views as his daughter. That is something that we can connect to, because if you have a daughter, or just anybody in your family really, would you not be willing to do anything to keep them safe? It may come off as selfish, but that is a real human emotion that we can connect with. That was one reason people liked Joel and Ellie. In part 2 though, you really don't feel that connection with this new protagonist, and instead you will probably hate her, and very early on at that, but then you have to turn around and play as her. So yeah, fans may be upset about that, and I really don't think this has anything to do with what Neil Druckmann is pointing to. I may be wrong here, but that's what I'm seeing most people complain about. It almost kind of reminds me of Halo 5. If you remember that game, it was also criticized for playing an unlikable character, Jameson Locke, and he wasn't near as unlikable as this unnamed The Last of Us Part 2 character. But yeah, people wanted to play as the Chief and not as Locke, and I think we are running to a similar situation here with The Last of Us Part 2. With that said though, from what I have played, there is still a lot to like here. The gameplay is really good and it's super impressive. I mean, the animations are just amazing, but it may really upset some fans in terms of its story. It'll by far go down as one of the most polarizing games in years, but I will ask you, are you liking the story for The Last of Us Part 2? Let me know in the comments below, and please, no spoilers for anybody. Now for this last topic, I will make this one brief, but there is a big controversy involving IGN and mistreated employees. But one story that has surfaced during this entire controversy is connected to Sony and Naughty Dog. So there was a story a few years ago that Amy Hennig, the writer for Uncharted, was forced out of Naughty Dog by Neil Druckmann. This, however, apparently was fabricated by IGN and their leaders at the time of that story. It's being said that it was to keep a good relationship with Sony, though I really don't know how that works since it makes their flagship first-party studio look really bad, but that is what was said. The good news here is that it was all false, and Amy Hennig did not get forced out by Naughty Dog, but it paints game media in a really bad light. IGN is one of the biggest gaming news outlets, and their leaders, which are gone now thankfully, and frankly they did not sound like great people, but they did this to stay in favor with Sony. Maybe they should have just been honest, but this just all looks incredibly bad. This story is still ongoing though, so I wouldn't be surprised to hear more terrible stories like this going forward, so if anything else comes of this, I will let you know. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.